I'm Sonya Morton Firth and you're watching the Sonya Morton Firth Show. Today I have the incredible honour of welcoming Brian Wood MC on my show. Brian is a Sunday Times best-selling author, former colour sergeant in the Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment. Brian was awarded the Military Cross for his courageous leadership in Iraq in the Battle of Danny Boy on the 14th of May 2004. Brian suffered post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and struggled to reintegrate back into family life. Years later, a public inquiry accused Brian and other soldiers of war crimes during the Iraq invasion. After 5 years of public shame, Brian's name was cleared and the inquiry was dismissed without foundation. Brian is now producing a major film on his life story. Brian, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. Actually, can I call you Woody?
Yeah, Woody's, I'm well known as Woody, so I'm more than happy with that, it's fine. Great.
So why did you decide to go into the military?
I've got over 300 years of unbroken service in my family.
Oh, I was going to say, you don't look that old, 300 years.
So yeah, very...
In your wow.
Yeah, in the family. So we've got, so many generations which have served this great nation. But I was destined to be a football player. I was quite talented when I was younger at playing football. I was at Chelsea.
You could look like a football player, actually.
It's at Chelsea. Then I went to Reading. It didn't work out. So I wanted to follow my dad and my brother, who was serving at the time as well, his footsteps. So yeah, I just went to the careers office down in Aldershot. They sold me the dream. And for a long time, it was the dream. And I went and travelled the world playing football as well. So yeah, it was, I spent 17 years as well in the military, an incredible organisation, powerful belonging, and it just made me feel part of something which, it's 100% made me the person I am today. So it's been great.
And was your dad proud that you went in? How was that?
Yeah, I've got a brother and a sister. So when my brother went in, my mum was desperate for me not to go.
Yeah,
because, she would have then seen two sons go away and into the military. So when I said to my dad I was going to join, he told me that I had to tell my mum. And I was like, no, Dad, you can tell her. And he did, actually. He said, look, Brian's made his mind up. And with me, if I'm on something, then I won't change my mind. I'm fully focused and determined and driven to go and achieve my goals. And my goal was to be a frontline soldier.
And so you joined up. And what was, I guess, the next major turning point for you?
I just kind of looked at the military in short bite sizes. I wanted to firstly pass training, get into my regiment, find my feet because I was still learning. And by that point, Kosovo, going on operations in Kosovo had crept in, and it was peacekeeping. But you always train as if if it can change. So you train for the worst course of action. So that was good, understanding the fundamentals of training for operations and being, super performance is a big thing. You've really got to push yourself and work hard, and that's kind of instilled in you. So it's good to understand that aspect before we went away on operations. Went away to Kosovo. It was kind of my foundations of understanding what it's like on operations and what it's like to be involved in peacekeeping missions. And then went operationally to Iraq in 2004, which seen the collapse of the peace out there and the uprising started, and it was chaotic, if I'm honest.
So before then you hadn't actually been in warfare as such? This was your first experience? It
was my first experience of kinetic warfare, yeah. And we didn't really have a transition either. Like, we landed in country and the Mahdi army had a real grip on Iraq as a whole, really. And Baghdad was like fully occupied with the Americans, with a small contingency of British forces in Baghdad. Al-Amara was where I was, and it was overly violent. And then Basra still had a kind of, at that stage, a little bit of peace process, but it was turning also. So we were in a real bad, sort of time aspect on that.
And how old were you at this point when you were?
23.
23 years old.
23. As a young commander, I was 23. I was a lance corporal, so I hadn't done any command courses, but I still understood what it was like to be in command of other soldiers.
And how much? I mean, just for people that are watching this that aren't familiar with it, how many soldiers were you in command of?
It's like a fire team, so yes, for us it's a fire team, so it's about four other guys. Mm-hmm. And once we're out, because we were armoured, so we were in armoured vehicles, but once we're outside of our vehicles, that's when I would take charge and give a bit of clear direction, be that commander on the ground, and obviously report up to my chain of command on what's going on and what the atmospherics and stuff are like. But like I said, it was just from start to finish pretty much carnage.
And what was that day like? It was May the 14th when you got the command, when you were in your vehicle. Talk me through that. Yeah,
I mean, like, we were out early April, so we'd been fighting pretty hard for just over a month at this stage. So being involved in a contact wasn't out of the norm. It was kind of day-to-day life in Alamar at that point. And initially I was told to stop what I was doing. So I was at a vehicle checkpoint, so we were pulling over vehicles, checking vehicles for transitional weapons, drugs, doing some biometrics on some of the Iraqis. And like a normal day really, got told to stop what I was doing, get back into the vehicle, got into the vehicle, put my headset on, and they'd said there'd been an incident with coalition forces, 2 casualties from the Argyll and Southern Highlanders, so another unit, and we were tasked to go down there and extract them. And so I was in the back, looked at the map, knew where we were going, and we just got violently hit by an ambush, which kind of made us come into a halt. And as I've looked at the map, I knew it was like this was different because we weren't in the city. We were out in the open. I was thinking, this is so different to what we've been normally used to. Normally we're in, and then on the rooftops, windows, alleyways, in the garden, it's all hard fighting. But this, it was out in the open. So the vehicle then, come to a halt, like I said, and the boys up in the turret, the commander and the gunner, were then communicating, trying to identify where this ambush site had come from, and identified it, started to engage it, and then, long story short, I was told to get out of the vehicle and counter this dug-in.
And at this point, did you know how many militia were around you, or how
No,
many?
I was trying to get as much information as I could from the commander, because it's very important that I understand what's out there. Because when you're in the back of a vehicle, it's like it's all but dark in there, overly hot. I mean, you're talking like 55 degrees outside.
55 degrees outside.
Outside. So you're thinking it's summertime now, or coming into summertime in the Middle East. It's red hot in the back of an armoured vehicle in this like 33-ton armoured fighting vehicle. You're touching boiling point, and then to get a word of command that you're going to get out and go into this ambush. A command like that doesn't come around very often. Yeah, we train for it, but actually hand-to-hand fighting, you don't really see very often. So you can only imagine, I went through all sorts of emotions. My heart was smashing against my body armour plate. I was asking my commander, how many are there? Initially it was 10 to 15 fighters, and there was only 3 of us in the back, so I thought we're pretty outnumbered there. But we had 2 vehicles at this point, so we had good capability with our armoured fighting vehicles with firepower. Weapon systems, they had traditional weapon systems, AK-47s, PKM, a Dushku on site, and RPGs, to name but a few. But we countered that with our capability. So I was sort of doing some small deductions, and then it was our time to get out of the vehicle.
Could you said no at any point?
No, I don't think. No, I think I understood why we needed boots on the ground, because we weren't having the effect, because they were in these trench type systems. They were just getting down and getting up and engage, and getting down, getting up and engage, and so we didn't have a big effect. So what we needed boots on the ground, soldiers on the ground, to then go in and counter what they kind of started.
And as I understand, that hasn't been done for like 25 years.
Yeah, I mean, they say that. I think that's a bit of the press hype, but soldiers have done some incredible stuff over the years, and there's also unspoken acts of courage and bravery that we don't really know about. So, there's that little bit of debate, but I mean, hand-to-hand fighting doesn't happen very often, especially trench warfare. And I mean, it was a pretty crazy day. We got out of the vehicle, went into a little holding position initially, was joined by another further 2 soldiers, another commander actually, discussion, and then we went forward and managed to survive. I got in to that main position. There was a lot of trauma, bodies.
When you say trauma, what do you mean by trauma?
Trauma injuries.
Injuries. So
yeah, they had a lot of casualties, dead. They'd been hit by a high velocity of caliber weapon systems. So you can only imagine there was kind of
body parts everywhere.
Yeah. And I'd never done this before, so when I'm like seeing this, it was pretty hard. But you have to just kind of switch off to that emotional moment and deal with what's in front of you, because there was militia who were having a verbal exchange. There was, as I said, there was bodies, and we just had to kind of deal with that in the moment. And as I sat, once we kind of got a bit of a foothold on what was going on, it was my first chance I had to have a sip of water. And as I was sipping the water, my company sergeant major turned up and then asked me if the battlefield was clear. And on the approach, there was militia who then decided they don't fancy it anymore, so they started to withdraw back. And as I approached, I seen that. So when my sergeant major asked me that, I said, "It's not clear."
Because you'd seen it.
Yeah. And he said, "Right, put a fresh magazine on. You and I are going to go and do a clearance patrol. And within 80 metres, we become..."
And it's just you two? And
we become engaged another further 2 times. So my sergeant major managed to take a target down, and then as I bounded forward, another militia fighter got out of a ditch with a weapon system, and I was quicker than he was, and I managed to take him down. But I'll never forget the noise and the choking noise that this fighter had made, because I caught him in around the throat area, and just the noise and the gasping. And as I bounded forward, because I'm now fighting for my life also, and as I bounded past him, I've said to my sergeant major, "Look, we need to go back to the main position because we're quite vulnerable." And he was like, "Woody, I agree." And we started making our way back to the main position, and I seen a flicker from the corner of my eye, and I looked over, and there's another 2 fighters which just stood up, but threw their weapons down. So then we had to take them in as POWs, as prisoner of war.
Why did they throw their weapons down?
I asked that to myself every so often, really, because they could have took us out. I just think they knew what was behind us, as in the coalition forces, and the amount of overwhelming firepower we had. And I don't know. I don't know. They just decided they didn't want to do any more, and they threw the weapons down. So we took them as prisoners, went back, and I can't remember how long we were there for, trying to sort this out. Because as I was walking down, I would see our medic working on these militia fighters, trying to revive them, fixing them up.
So this is the enemy that they're trying to...
But that's what we do. I mean, once the fighting's once there's a lull, if there's someone who is breathing, you've got to maintain that.
Yeah.
And and we'll talk about the inquiry later. But this was never discussed in the inquiry room. It took me to say that why aren't we talking about us trying to revive the militia fighters or stabilise militia fighters? Why is that all passed over? Because it happened. We were trying to medically look after them, but it wasn't mentioned during the inquiry. But so we took a moment, and then my sergeant major come back over and said, "Look, we need to take these bodies back to camp."
Bodies back to camp?
Because they believed that the main militia leader, because it was such a big uprising in 2004, Muqtada al-Sadr was one of the main militia leaders, and they believed, because it was such a preempted ambush on British coalition forces with a lot of militia fighters, they thought, our higher echelon thought, that he was in amongst it, either been captured or killed. So the call came that we had to take the bodies back, take them back to camp, and then they would have been identified through biometrics, fingerprints, or exactly, DNA. And I just couldn't believe it.
Were you exposing yourself to more risk as well by them having to pick?
Yeah, I mean, the rebound, there was a big rebound as well by taking them back, and because I believe we should never have done it, but there was There was a reason behind it. And also, what a demand on the headspace that was. It was carnage, because I don't care what anyone says, taking another human's life, especially so close, then having to then go back and pick that body up when it's in a bad way, to then load it onto vehicles. And it wasn't just one or two. There was a lot of bodies, and like I said, there was pretty disfigured, and they're in a bad way.
How did it make you feel? I mean, how does it make you feel now talking about it?
I think it's actually not too bad talking about it now. I never spoke about it for a long time. I let a lot of things build up, but I don't mind talking about it now because it's a little bit of therapeutic for me, so it's not too bad. But in the moment, I remember one of the other lads being violently sick because it was not very nice, and I've told him to go and just have a seat, and then picking up with a lad, Begsy, big lad. Me and him were picking up these bodies and loading them on. I was just thinking, I may even been a little bit battle shocked, if I'm honest. I'm not too sure, because it's hard to analyse, back in 2004 how I was, but I was just like a bit zombified and just doing what we had to do, because I was like, we were in that moment, and we took them back to the camp. Had an issue with the back door as well, because it's on a hydraulic system, because it's an armoured door. You can't open it like a car door. It wouldn't open. The only other way to open it is for someone to climb through the back over the bodies and manually crank it. So that had happened. My driver, he did that. We actually played paper, scissors, stones to see who would do that.
Who's going to do it?
Yeah. And I have a bit of guilt on that, because I was a commander and I maybe should have led by example and went down and done it myself. But I can't change it now. It's just one of the lessons learned from me, really. And it was just chaos, if I'm honest. Then we had to drain all the access plates within the back, because it was filling up with man fat, blood clots, feces, you name it. It was just because once a human body is not workable anymore, it obviously just relaxes and all sorts, and it's just with bullet holes and with stuff missing. You can only imagine what it was like, and it was the smell was horrendous. It was just hard to process. So we just kind of switched off from that event.
Do you dream about it, or do you have nightmares on it? Or?
Not so much nightmares. I would find myself pondering, daydreaming about things. Not waking up in pure sweats, but daydreaming about things. And but that kind of that didn't happen immediately. That happened kind of a few years afterwards. And but yeah, I mean, crazy day, very overwhelming mentally. We had to be pretty powerful, and back in them days in 2004, no one knew how to talk about it, because it wasn't as educated as what it is now. I mean, now the awareness now for mental health is incredible. You're really, encouraged to talk about certain events that had happened, because they're not normal events to the human.
No,
these are abnormal. When you're seeing people getting hurt, or when you see physical trauma on a human being, it's abnormal. But I didn't allow I didn't give myself that time to process. And also, I was in an all-male organisation. I was a frontline soldier, a leader, commander, decision maker. So I wasn't going to then put my hand up and say I'm struggling a little bit, because I felt that people's perception and then of me would be I was weak. I was, I need to man up a little bit because I'm a frontline soldier. But I am a frontline soldier. I'm also just a normal human being.
And maybe that is manning up, actually talking about it.
Definitely. And when I did, further down the line, talk about a number of different, I was kind of involved in so much trauma, because the Battle of Danny Boy was one small set piece battle to what I was actually involved in, and I really go to detail in my book. And
is there any other part? I know we mentioned suicide before.
Yeah, it's actually our second tour of Iraq. And it was quiet. It was a withdrawal. So we'd come to an end with our operations in Iraq, Telek, which was the operational name for it. And it was just another morning. The mist was down. I was coming back. I'd just been for breakfast. I was coming back to get the remainder of my kit to then go up. And it was called an Operation Spartan. So we were just being an outer cordon for some of the special forces going in and doing some of their tasks. And as I was getting the remainder of my kit, I heard this machine gun fire in the tent next to me, and it was like a muffled effect. And I knew straight away that something serious was wrong, because we weren't loaded at this time, so we never even had magazines on our weapons. So I knew it was serious, and then I could start to hear some shouting. And as I ran out of my tent, I saw one of the other commanders telling me that he's taken his life. And as I've gone into the tent, the first thing I smelled was like this burning flesh. And then I've gone through the door, and his platoon sergeant was there, and just, in disbelief, asking him why he's done it. And then, kind of looked over and, seen what I'd seen. And the medic came in and took one look and then passed out. And when I say this to a few people
the
laugh.
Medic passed out.
The thing is, like, everyone reacts differently, and that it was such a shock. I've never seen anything like that before. And when it's kind of,
when you say anything like that, what was it?
Just
like?
the natures of the injuries. You can only, it was weapon system in the mouth, and then you can only, and it was terrible. And then the medic come in, fainted. We're trying to kind of understand what was going on. I took the weapon system off him, which was a lunch.
Did he left a letter or anything? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it came out that he was really close to his father. He was diagnosed with terminal illness, and I just think it was unbearable for him, and he decided not to talk about how he was processing this, and he unfortunately ended his life. And it was just tragic, if I'm honest. And so in 2010 I actually went and got some professional help, spoke to someone about how the Battle of Danny Boy, and then later on when the allegations came out, which we'll talk about. I was under a lot of pressure, and I didn't have a clear vision. It was just so clogged with everything that was going on. And when I actually did have that therapy, I never once spoke about this suicide incident.
Did it not come up, or did your brain not process it?
I think I just didn't process it. I just didn't think about that that moment. It was kind of, they're like scabs. For me, this is how the best I describe it. Different incidences are like scabs. So if I don't process them, I just cover them up.
Yeah,
but then in certain situations, they're like they're picked off, and then I feel this emotion. And I mean, I never acknowledged the fact that this had happened. And even when I went and spoke to a professional about what was going on with myself, it was only until I started writing my book, and then I got into this, this chapter, and I couldn't shake it. I just could not shake the smell, the sight, and it was hard. Couldn't, it was played on my mind like quite a lot, and that's why it's so important to talk about these incidences, and when they're not natural, they're not normal. So it's okay to talk about stuff that's not normal, doing what I did and hide things away, because the only people that I really affected was the people in my household, really, because I didn't know how to deal with what has been going on.
So coming to that, you came out of the army. What was it like going back to your family? Because at that point you were married.
I mean, everyone will, or a lot of people will say, who had been away serving and coming back from tour, it's difficult. The transition's hard because you've been away for such a long time. People at home just get on with it. I mean, they're very resilient. They're in their routines. For you to get back and just kind of be in the moment, it doesn't work like that. There's a lot of different emotions. You have to slowly bed yourself back into your family life. You don't know really what to do. I left my son when he was 3 weeks old. I came back and he was 6 months, and I was like,
so it's a baby that you don't really know.
And I'm then putting pressure on myself to be the best dad I could be. Too much pressure on myself. Resented Lucy a little bit because of her relationship and her bond with my son, and it was just it's just difficult. It's hard.
And could you talk to Lucy about your trauma? Was that something that
No, I mean, initially I wouldn't. No way. No, not when I just got back. I wanted to keep everything away from the family, so I just kind of kept it to myself. And even the other lads who were involved in that tour, it was just like a mutual respect. We never really sat down and got anything off our chests. It was just a nod of kind of, you've been there, a nod of respect, and then just kind of bypass each other and just crack on, because no one really knew back then how to create dialogue on what we've just been up to and been doing.
So at what point did you know you had post-traumatic stress disorder? Was it sort of diagnosed, or was it...
I personally think that the majority of people who experience in hard, intense combat has an element of it anyway. And I'm no different. I think about things, have a beer. The natural conversation then, once you've had a beer, is to talk about what you did on operations. That's kind of venting, but you shouldn't be doing it on beer. You should be doing it like this, over a cup of tea. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, and I just couldn't. When I realised that I needed to speak to someone, was the allegations that I was up against.
So tell me about that. So tell me about the day you got a letter. I believe you were in a commander's course, and your wife gave you a call, and she'd received a letter. Yeah,
I was just on a course. I was on my commando course down at Limpston, because I was then earmarked to go down there as an instructor on their senior division as a colour sergeant, and had a load of missed calls, phoned back, thought there's something wrong with the kids, and then we've got a letter, and the letter basically states that there's allegations made against you, there's going to be a public inquiry launching, and the allegations are murder, mutilation and mistreatment from the Battle of Danny Boy.
I mean, how did you feel at that point? I mean,
disbelief, really. Disbelief, and a bit of disappointment, because I had to hear it from Lucy, not my regiment.
Which is it from your wife.
I mean, lessons learned definitely from my regiment at the time. They should have, at least, because of the allegations were so serious, I think someone should have come down and had a face-to-face conversation with me to reassure me as well. But it never happened. But I don't massively blame them. At the end of the day, they get small things wrong. It's like any other organisation. It didn't happen. I phoned up.
And at this point, you'd received your military cross?
Yeah, that was done in 2005. Don't really speak about that, to be honest. But yeah.
So we
no, but I don't anyway. But I don't really anyway.
So you've received your military cross, and then you're getting this letter saying you're basically a murderer.
Yeah. So I've read through, and it just stunk anyway. The just everything about it was just wrong, and it got traction, and more traction, and more traction. I was thinking, how? So then I was like, then all of a sudden I was weekly getting statements sent through in the post. So I was kind of in Danny Boy constantly. I couldn't get any release from it.
And was that bringing all these horrible memories, sights?
Well, it's going to, isn't it? Because I've got to go through every bit of detail. From how many bodies we took back, how many gunshot wounds, did it take to eliminate a threat? And I'm like, but these are like what I've got to now. It's the true detail. And this was 5 years on. So this is now in 2009, 2004. The battle happened. So I'm having to go through statements, highlighting, and getting questions on different statements, and it just went on for another 5 years until
5 years you went through that.
Yeah. So the allegations came 5 years after Danny Boy, and then 5 years until I was asked to go into the dock to be cross-examined on the battle, and with these fighters that we were up against claiming to be innocent farmers, which was, the evidence was just ridiculous anyway. But it's all to do with Phil Shiner. Phil Shiner was
he was the lawyer that was...
He was gold standard. He'd done some very, very, very good work. And he was involved in the Bar Mitzvah, which, there was wrongdoing on the British military aspect, and that was highlighted, and that was actioned. But this was not another Bar Mitzvah. This was it was crazy allegations, if I'm honest, and how they even got to where they got was beyond me. But they did, and it was probably because of how good Phil Shiner...
Did the media have a lot to do with this, or was it...
I think Phil Shiner's credibility had a lot to do with it. But what he was doing, he was paying middlemen bungs of money in Iraq to come up with allegations. They knew that the Battle of Danny Boy was a significant battle. There was a lot of people who were who were killed during that, a lot of fighters who were killed during that battle. So it was an easy in for payments. So he was telling, agents in Iraq, come up with these allegations, we'll pay you money, and then we'll then start to create cases and move forward. And that's what he did. He just built case by case by case. And it ended up being like £31 million of taxpayers' money for just absolute lies. And, Sir Thane Thorpes was the chairman of the inquiry, and he was the judge during Harold Shipman.
Yeah, I remember.
And I thought to myself, bloody hell, I mean, I don't stand much of a chance with him. But he was actually really good. He made me feel comfortable.
At any point did you think, shit, I'm going to trial here?
I mean, the thing is, your mind does go into overdrive, and I've never ever been under that much pressure. I was more comfortable on the battlefield than I was.
I'm not surprised
back on the UK soil.
Because you've got a gun in your hand, I guess, and
I was trained. I understood what it meant to be a commander. I was comfortable leading, but I wasn't comfortable doing what I was doing in the UK because I didn't understand. I wasn't trained to deal with these allegations. The press are then printing stuff. Panorama have released on whose orders, which made us out to be barbaric murderers. I'm like, how do I deal with this? I'm getting questions asked from friends.
Yeah,
did I do it? So I was justifying my actions like all the time, and it was just like, it was difficult. It was hard.
But also, you put your life for our country. I mean, you literally served our country. I mean, was there any point, like, I don't like anger and the emotion, being angry, but you're not feeling angry?
A little bit
stage of like, hang on a minute, I've seen some atrocities. I put my life for this country, and this is how you get repaid. I mean,
yeah. But the thing is, we as soldiers don't look at it like that. We volunteered. We are passionate about our country. I'm patriotic. I wanted to make a small difference, like so many people within my regiment, the other soldiers on the ground with me that day, because it wasn't just me, and everyone else who has served their country. We kind of don't look at it like that. For me, the anger was when I was in the dock and I had someone shred me in my values, like discredit every single thing that I'd done as an operational commander, knowing that he has not got any credibility to me because he's never been in foreign fields, and he hasn't had to make split-second decisions in extreme situations, and you get a millisecond of a buffer to try and get it right. And you're questioning me about my decision making. I'm like, you don't even understand what it's like to make decisions in like intense situations. For you then just to put my citation up on the screen in front of everyone, but then pick away at it and just shred it in front of me, it just belittled me, and I felt gutted when I left that stand.
Have you forgiven him?
Yeah. He's got to learn. He's got to live with it. I mean, the bottom line is he's made some big errors. British public are pretty brutal. They'll tell it how it is. So he's got to front that up. He's got to live with that. And me, I can't dwell on the past. I really have to be focused on the future. Absolutely. And really push hard for what I want to achieve in 5 years' time or 3 years' time, and look after my family, which is my main aim at the moment, and really just push forward.
So in terms of, have you learned any lessons, like is this like in terms of life lessons or things that this whole thing has sort of happened?
I think my lessons were, I'm not universal. I'm not a universal soldier. I've got feelings, I've got emotions, and therefore I should speak about them. And I encourage to do that, because it's not being weak to go and talk about some of the events that you've witnessed, because they're foreign events. They're not what we do day to day. So it's okay to speak about that. And actually you feel good, and it's a release to do so. So we encourage speaking about our mental capabilities, because we're all well and good talking about how we look physically, but no one really fancies talking about how we look mentally.
This is a powerful tool.
They go hand in hand.
So
it's very important to do that. And for me, a lesson is I should have acknowledged that sooner rather than later, because I did cause a bit of turbulence going through my own kind of mental demand and my mental battle. And just believe in yourself. And for me, it was staying true to my values and who I was. And my dad always said, just stay true to yourself and your values, and you'll get through this real turbulent time. And it's just kind of trying to stay focused, have good people around you, and keep bounding forward.
And what's next? What's next on the horizon? You've written a book. I hear there may be a film out.
Yeah. I mean, the book, it was brilliant for me just to get things down. Because
what's the book called? We'll put those in the show notes as well.
It's called Double Crossed. And it took a while to write. It took a while to get published because there were certain people which didn't want it published. But we managed to...
Can you say who didn't want it? Was it...
Phil Shinan's group. You know, just made a bit of a fuss. But anyway, we got it out. It was published and it just superseded all of my expectations. Went into the Sunday Times bestseller. And just the feedback that I've had from it, I'm just a big believer in the truth. And there was so much what went on. And also the MOD had a few highlights of lessons to be learnt because they never looked after us like they should have. And I've highlighted that in the book, and hopefully they will then take them as lessons learnt. I spoke about statute of limitation. There's got to be, you can't just keep dragging up, allegations years and years after conflicts are happening, and it's unfair. There should be a limit, and then if there's no new credible evidence, then it's closed. It's unfair to drag veterans who give everything for their country through the mill because it's not nice. I've done it.
Brain must have switched off as well.
It's just not fair. If there's no real credible evidence, if there's something that happens, we action it, and then you've got to be accountable for your actions. But when it's people out there witch hunting, we've got to have a protection net because it's unfair. And that's what I really wanted to get in the book and talk about some of the corruption side of things.
It's an interesting word, witch hunting. I think you just nailed it actually when you said that.
Yeah. And the book was out not long after. It was then optioned by a production company, was worked on. It was then greenlit, commissioned, and we start filming in probably the back end of March.
And I know you can't say too much about the film, but it's going to be a major drama. Is that?
Major dramatisation, yeah.
Major dramatisation coming out this year.
Yeah.
And some...
It's I can't give, obviously, I'll be...
But it's your life story,
yeah,
right?
it's my life story. And it's not just focused on the operational demand. I mean, there is a really powerful piece on operations, but there's also the piece back at home and how hard it is to transition at home and the difficulties and obviously the witch hunt. So it's exciting times, and I'm just like a normal dude, but
you certainly aren't a normal dude.
No, I am.
I've been sitting here listening.
Honestly, I am just like any other person which served their country, men and women. I mean, they are all incredible, and those who currently are serving are just that 5% of excellence that we need, and we should always continue to support. Like I said, I'm just doing my thing, and I've got a vision. I know where I want to be, and I'm just kind of let's see what happens. It's exciting times.
Talking about visions in the future, I ask this to all my guests. My last question: if you were to write a message in a bottle to be found by future generations, what would that message be?
I know it's a bit of a cliche, but be kind, smile, and be true to yourself, and hold your values dearly.
Woody, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for
serving
our country as well.
No problem,
I've really enjoyed that.
No dramas.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, there's a new interview out every Monday, so hit subscribe and like, and you'll get it straight into your inbox.